John, the 21st chapter, beginning with the first verse. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore. But the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far away from the shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of them, the disciples, would ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The 3rd time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the 3rd time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. I tell you the truth, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the type of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." Well, when our story begins, Peter and the other disciples are confused. What do we do now? I mean, for the last 3 years or so, they've had a plan. And it's an easy plan. We follow Jesus. Jesus walks around Galilee and around Judea, and we follow him. And he teaches the crowds, and then he teaches us in private. He tells us to go out and preach. We go out and preach. We come back. Simple, just do what Jesus said. But things have changed. Jesus died. He was killed, executed, and they were afraid. And then he came back, and they were joyful. And now it's obvious that Jesus has come back, but it's not like it was before. He's not wandering around the countryside preaching to large groups of people. In fact, he's not really here all the time. He'll just come and he'll show up. They'll be sitting together in a locked room, and Jesus will suddenly be with them, and then he'll be gone. And maybe it'll be a week before they see him again. Maybe it'll be a couple of days. They don't know. So Peter finally just says, well, I got to do something. I used to be a fisherman. I'm going to do that again. Peter didn't say, I'm going fishing the way I would say I'm going fishing. I'm taking the day off and I'm going to get my pole and I'm going to go sit on the side of the creek and cast my line in and just have a lazy day. Don't really care if anything bites or not, just I'm going to sit here and relax and go fishing. No, when Peter was going fishing, he was going back to work as a fisherman. That was a job he had before he chose to follow Jesus. This period of following Jesus seems to be over, so might as well go back to what I know. But Peter didn't understand. Now, I don't blame Peter for not understanding. This is not a lesson he'd had a chance to learn yet. He can't go back. He's followed Jesus for 3 years. He can't go back to the person he was before he knew Jesus. And this story, this encounter that Peter and the other disciples had with Jesus should, in our minds, bring us back to how Jesus called Peter the first time. We're told that Peter and Andrew and James and John had been out fishing all night and hadn't caught anything. Sound familiar so far? And Jesus shows up and says, hey, caught anything? No luck? Well, put your net out on the other side of the boat. They put their net out on the other side of the boat and they bring in a great catch of fish. And then Jesus says to Peter, follow me. Peter and Andrew and James and John leave their boats and their nets with the hired hands and follow Jesus. Jesus is connecting in Peter's mind. He's repeating what happened before the first time he was called. Now, the first time he was called him, he said, you were a fisherman, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. You're going to draw people in to me. This time he's got a different task for him. He said, feed my sheep. He's gone from being a fisherman to being a shepherd. So things are different than they were. But the lesson that Peter had to learn was there was no going back. He could only go one direction. He could only go forward. Once we have a relationship with Christ, we can never go backwards. Once we have been changed through our relationship with Christ, we can never undo it. Now, we can mess it up a lot. And we can have a pretty terrible relationship with Christ if we try hard enough and if we don't want to have a good relationship with him. But we can never go back to the point of not having a relationship with him. Peter couldn't go back to what he was before he knew Christ. Neither can we. Nor should we want to. This is great news. Once we accept Christ as a friend, he's our friend forever. And sometimes we have friends in life who we don't cultivate the relationship and we don't work to make the relationship last, and we fall apart. Or one person says or does something and the friend gets angry and leaves, and the relationship withers, dies. Not that way with Jesus. Yeah, we can draw apart. We can stop listening to him. We can stop spending time in prayer. But he's still our friend. Now here's where problems get sometimes. We try to live like we lived before we were Christian. And we think, well, I can go back to whatever my sinful life was like before Christ. No, you can't. Oh, you can try to. But when you were sinning in ignorance because it seemed like it was okay, or it seemed like it was fun, and then you become a Christian, and then you try to go back to that life, that sin loses some of its appeal. And instead of seeing the fun, you see the price. When I was in college, we took a trip to New Orleans. Now, it was not Mardi Gras, but it was that season. It was about a week afterwards. And on Friday night, we were all out on Bourbon Street. And there were the lights flashing and the music playing. And there was the drinking, and there was the people getting high on nitrous oxide in the streets. And there were people walking around half undressed, and sometimes more than half undressed. Now, there's a reason that the party in New Orleans goes on at night, and it doesn't start till dark. Because we went home about midnight, back to the hotel about midnight, and then 7 in the morning, the minister who's leading the group gets us all up and takes us back down to Bourbon Street. And we see the broken or empty bottles littering the street. We see the trash everywhere. We see the people passed out in the alleys and up against the building. In the light of day, all those things that look like everybody just having a good time and having fun, we saw the ugly truth. We saw the cost that they paid for that. Once you know Christ, sin never has the same appeal to you. It may still tempt you from time to time, don't get me wrong. But you don't feel good when you do it anymore. You're changed. As a pastor, I have dealt many times with members of the church, some who have been Christians for years. And they have doubts over whether their relationship with Christ is real. Was it just in my head? Did I imagine it? Or did I really give my life to Christ? There's an easy way to tell. If you give your life to Christ, your life changes. And it changes forever. You can never go back to what you were before you knew Christ. And if you can, you probably didn't really know Christ. And that's your chance to try again. Sin still tempts me. I still find it fun. Okay, you don't know Jesus. But if you want to, we're on the right path. How do you know that Christ is present in your life? Because your life has been changed. I know. Change is frightening, We like things the way they are. It's even so we like some of the bad things that we prefer, what's the old saying? The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Even the bad things, we don't want them to change because we know how to deal with them. I saw a sign, one of my fellow pastors posted online, and it was a church committee member talking to the pastor and said, "We want you to lead us into transformation, but we don't want you to change anything. We want to be transformed, but we don't want to change." Well, it doesn't work that way. But this is a good change. Look at the change that happened in Peter. A few weeks before this encounter with Jesus, he had stood in the courtyard where Jesus was on trial inside the building. And he had been asked 3 times if he knew Jesus, and he had denied 3 times that he knew him, because he was afraid that he was going to be put up on a cross beside Jesus. Fast forward to today's lesson. And Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" And Peter says yes each time. And Jesus says to him, basically, if you choose to follow me, they're going to kill you. And Peter says, yes, I will follow you, even though it leads to my death. What a change in just a few weeks. But it's a change between knowing Jesus as a man and knowing Jesus as the Son of God. It's a change knowing that Jesus has conquered death. He's experienced the risen Christ. And he is not afraid of dying anymore. When you grow in your relationship with Christ, you will be changed in ways you can never change back. You can only move forwards. But that is a good thing.